Journey of the Mind to God by Saint Bonaventure, also known as Giovanni di Fidanza. Yes, I know it sounds like a dance. 1221 to 1220. Oh, I do this every time. 1221 to 1274. A type of work in theology and epistemology. First transcribed 1259. The principal ideas of which are: the 6 stages of the soul's powers correspond to the 6 stages of the ascension unto God. God is reflected in the traces in the sensible world. Then, in considering the powers of the self, through self-love, self-knowledge, and memory, the mind comes closer to God. Memory, intelligence, and will are recognized as reflecting God's Trinitarian nature. By disciplined contemplation, we are led even closer to the divine. In recognizing the necessity of God's being for our understanding, the mind's work is done. The final stage is the mind's abandonment of intellectual powers in the mystical knowledge of God. Both the size and the title of Saint Bonaventura's most famous little work I'm still blocked up at the moment. Excuse my Latin. Itinerarium mentis ad deum. Belie its contents. From its size, the innocent reader might take it to be a meditation on some single point. From its title, one might easily come to think of it as vague and mystical. Actually, the opposite of both of these common impressions is the case. The Itinerarium belongs to the company of the Summa Theologica of Thomas Aquinas, although its brevity indicates the quite different temper of its author. Bonaventure, the seraphic doctor, does not use the elaborate compendium method, yet in brief compass we see unfurled in this work a view of nature, man, or humanity, and God, no less comprehensive than that contained in a many-volumed work. As to its mystical qualities, what must first be grasped is that this work does in fact reflect classical mysticism, but that Bonaventura's presentation of this viewpoint is both detailed and highly technical. To sketch completely the structure which Bonaventure outlines would require a quite detailed study. It is rational in every detail, right up to the point at which reason finds its own end and realizes its own boundaries. Reason will be left behind, and ecstatic vision will become the goal. But this does not transpire until the very peak of possible human understanding has been reached. Only when reason has done its utmost at description and explanation can a way be seen to transcend reason. In this brief work, what we find is an elaborate, intricate and technical view, rational to its core, but aimed from the beginning at finding reason's limiting point in order thereby to leave it behind. What is perhaps hardest for the modern mind to grasp is that Bonaventure both begins and ends with God. The modern prejudice which must be overcome here is the same one which plagues Anselm's famous ontological argument. The contemporary philosopher is addicted to the primacy of the theory of knowledge. Before any question is asked, the modern reader must inquire whether, methodologically considered, the quest is justifiable and the object knowable. Bonaventure and a host of others, on the other hand, pose the ultimate question of God at the outset, just as if it were answerable. Only through the technical process of attempting to construct the answer can the success or the failure of the endeavour be discovered. This process of the attempt itself is the source of our correction. The limits of the question are recognizable not at the beginning but only at the end of the argument. Not unlike the Greek invocation of the Muses in the face of a difficult task, Bonaventure in the prologue called upon God to enlighten him in his quest. His use of the term Father of Light for God and his stress upon illumination places Bonaventure well within the Augustinian and Neoplatonic traditions. God is to be immediately addressed at the outset of all serious consideration, since he is cast in the role of a first principle and as such is central to any knowing process. For all this, the work still has a devotional element woven into it as one thread of its fabric. Francis of Assisi, the founder of Bonaventure's order, is mentioned reverentially at the outset, and Bonaventure himself claims to have undergone a vision like that experienced by Francis. However, coupled with the theme must be the awareness that Bonaventure served as a highly successful minister, in fact as Minister General of his order. This obvious organizational skill, which daily must have called for the solution of dozens of practical problems, is balanced against the visionary quality of his writing. 6 stages of ascension to God are described in this little work. Their delineation is purely technical and rational, but Bonaventure at the same time considers prayer one means of becoming enlightened about them. To modern minds so used to splitting spirituality and rationality completely apart, such duality in Bonaventure's thought is hard to grasp. To do so, however, is also to come close to understanding the special feature of the itinerarium. For all natural objects have a double side. They are at once parts of a structured natural order, discoverable by reason, and at the same time, when properly viewed, may come to be seen as traces of God himself. Such divine traces are uncoverable in many places, but we begin with those which are corporeal and outside of us, as contrasted to those spiritual and interior. Man's mind has 3 principal aspects, one of which is animal or sensual, another of which makes it capable of introspection, and a third in virtue of which it is able to look above itself and to grasp levels of existence higher than its own natural order. And since all natural objects have a divine side, the 6 stages of the soul's powers correspond to the 6 stages of the ascension unto God. To describe the levels of ascent to God is to delineate the soul's powers, to set forth the soul's capacities, is to outline the levels through which God is to be approached. Theology itself has three modes: symbolic, literal and mystical. The symbolic gives proper interpretation to sensible things, the literal corresponds to an intelligible level, and the mystic transcends the level of rationality. All three are properly theology, but none of these is to be undertaken without preparation, since rectitude of the will and the clarity of unimpeded vision are necessary. Then the sensible world may be taken up for consideration, and it will be transformed upon reflection into a veritable Jacob's ladder. The sense world being, as it is, so full of the traces of God. So, proceeding by transposing natural qualities into a divine setting, weight, number, and measure provide a basis for grasping the power, wisdom, and immense goodness of the Creator. One inquires after the origin, course, and terminus of the natural order, and then a grasp of the various levels of natural organisms can be acquired. From this, one moves to consider God as a counterpart of these levels and of this order, as spiritual, incorruptible, and immutable. The natural order is a plenitude full of every level and variety of kind. Such munificence is a source of natural illumination for the mind in its search for the proper road to God. God is reflected in his traces in the sensible world, and he is known not only through them, but also in them. The reader would move too quickly if he or she thought Bonaventure considered the natural order only to pass beyond it so quickly. Like others before him in his tradition, in this work Bonaventure sees the natural world as being both good and beautiful, so that to an eye sensitive to such structure, God can actually be seen without taking our eyes away from the world of the sense even for a moment. The five senses are like doors. Through apprehending motion, we are led to the cognition of spiritual movers as a progress from effect to cause. Our senses lead us to the apprehension, then to delight in the natural order, and finally to judgment, which operates by abstraction and renders the sensible objects intelligible. Then, following Augustine's on music, Bonaventure regards number as the outstanding exemplar of God to be found in the physical world. All Platonists have been fascinated with the intelligible and yet nonsensible properties of number, especially its relation to the qualities of rhythm and proportion. The invisible things of God come to be seen, being grasped in and through the changing sensible world. Like a sign, the sensible order leads the discerning mind to the intelligible, and seeing this, we are led to turn from an outward vision and to consider the mind itself. Right. Grasping how divine things may be seen as reflected in the order of nature leads us to turn inward to consider ourselves, and here divine images appear most clearly. For the natural, psychical phenomena are self-love, self-knowledge, and memory. Here Bonaventure follows Augustine's classical model and finds in these a representation of the divine Trinity. Particularly in memory, the soul is most like an image of God, for God lives with all objects eternally present to him, and the soul imitates this power in the grasp of its own power of memory. Nor can we understand the being of any particular object until we come to understand being in itself. Memory, intelligence, and will form in us a second reflection of God's Trinitarian nature, so that when the mind considers itself, it rises through itself and through a mirror to the contemplation of the Divine Trinity. Having brought the mind so close to God in structure, Bonaventure turns to inquire why not all men or women see God clearly in themselves. I will pick that up in part 2.